Good morning. We're going to start talking about the Hunger Games with the idea of names. And yes, it's going to be names again, in part because names are a central element to characterization. We talked about names as acts of agency and wholes. We talked about names as illusions in The Knife of Never Letting Go. We talked about the naming ceremony being an essential element of community in A Long Way Gone. And we talked about the fact that names were central to the character's humanity in A Long Way Gone as well. So, as we're going through the names in these characters, I think we're going to take a look at um, how the names reflect who these characters are, and we'll just kind of go from there. I took a second here to quote one of the more important statements about names, and the idea that the name was as central to the character John Proctor in The Crucible as his soul. And so I think when we look here, the names might be a reflection of the character's soul, or of not the spiritual soul necessarily, but the soul that determines who they are, what kind of person they are. Before I move on too far, I should do a quick make a quick point that you should remember that characterization is determined by how the character acts, how other characters react to the character, and what the character says and how other characters react to that. When we get to characterization, we'll keep developing that. And that also might be a point for the essay that's on a separate video. If we first look at Cinna, the stylist, you'll notice that he was a character in Julius Caesar. I think that a lot of the names here are designed to make people think of Rome. In part, this is the idea historically, a lot of American thinkers have likened America to Rome and the Republic and the Empire and the degradation of the Empire and the capital. All of that is a reference to Rome. Also, it sounds like sinner. And again, in subsequent books, Cinna becomes sort of the sinner to the people in the capital. Um, and so there's some name links that aren't necessarily here in this book, but there are things that I want to talk about in this book that make me wonder who or what this character is. Cornelius Snow, um, and I pronounced the name wrong. Let's just keep going here. But I think the Snow, certainly the idea of this cold and nasty personality, ties again to a Shakespearean character who preferred the aristocrats to the common people. I think that those sorts of um, comparisons are valid, just like the Aaron comparison was valid in The Knife of Never Letting Go. But again, if you take a look at the last name here, it's that cold and nasty personality that I think is a chunk of who and what the character is. Effie Trinket. A trinket is a small, flashy thing with little to no value. And Effie is taking two kids who are likely going to die in the Hunger Games, has escorted previous kids who were killed in the Hunger Games. And what she is concerned about is their manners. And the fact that people eating with their hands made her upset her digestion, while people dying horribly in the arena doesn't seem to have anything to do with her digestion. I think she is a small, flashy thing who doesn't recognize value at any level. Peeta, sounds like Peeta, the son of a baker. He burns the bread to give it to Katniss. I think once again, this name is pretty self-explanatory. I think it fits um, who and what he is, and it sets up the kind of working boy love interest with the girl as we go through the Hunger Games. I think all of that works pretty well. Katniss, First of all, we get a hint of the theme with the name Katniss because her name gets explained in the novel. As long as she can find herself, she will never starve. Finding yourself, finding out who you are, is one of the key elements of this novel, just like it's the key element for Q in uh, Paper Towns. It's the key element for Stanley and Holds. Remember, we're told we're supposed to worry about Stanley's character in Holds, and it's the key element here. Also, Katniss is named after an arrow-shaped plant. Her skill with the bow and arrow uh, ties into the same thing as Snow or Effie Trinket. And again, it gives her the idea of the theme, the idea that all young adult literature is supposed to talk about developing a sense of self. This just pushes that right in your face. Rue, some of you might think of Rue as the cooking thing, but remember, it's to feel remorse or repentance. It's to wish undone or made. Sometimes it's used in the sense of you will rue the day. And certainly, uh, the people who killed Rue rued the day. Also, the fact that it's an herb and it was bitter tasting leaves that were formerly used in medicine. When she uses the leaves to treat Katniss's stings, that certainly is fitting her name with her actions. Um, Katniss is sorrowful and regretful at Rue's death. There are lots of things here that I think are important elements of who the character is that go with the name. Thresh comes from District 11. It's an agricultural district, and to thresh means to toss about and thrash, to beat out a grain from its husk. Okay, threshing. When I was a little kid, 3, 4 years old, um, my parents and grandparents still used a threshing machine on the farm. I was, I think, 4 when we got our first combine. The idea of separating grain from chaff, threshing, is part of it. And again, Rue and Thresh coming from the agricultural district, Rue and Thresh knowing about agricultural um, practices, the names fit who and what they are. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about characterization. Remember that there can be direct characterization. I think, you're a jerk is direct characterization. There can be indirect characterization. It's what I referred to earlier in this presentation. How the character acts, what the character says, how other characters react to that character, and then we infer what's going on. The entertainment, death, and reality plot or subplot is a big chunk of characterization here as well. And it makes me wonder, who or what are these people? For example, Gale. Gale has the statement about you know how to kill, and then he wonders how different it is to kill people as opposed to hunt animals. And I think at some level it's self-defense, and we all kind of identify with Gale and identify with Katniss and identify with Peeta. They're the ones we want to win. At the same time, there's this moral question: is viewing people as no different than a food source morally different in any substantive way than the view the capital has of people from the district as tributes? People serve a purpose. People are the same as animals. They exist for our entertainment. And so I think when you take a look at Gale, there's a certain moral ambiguity to the statements that he's making here. And when we think about Gale, it goes back to the paper. Is this a moral thought experiment? If it is a moral thought experiment, what form does it take? Effie, Um, the quotation, Effie's all fired up about the sponsors, all fired up about the team that's made a splash at the opening ceremonies, and the fact that PETA and Katniss are the first team that's made a splash at the opening ceremonies. And she's been talking people up to sponsors all day. And to hear her view of everything, she knows everyone. So PETA and Katniss are making Effie look good, and she likes them, and she's happy. And she's happy that she gets to talk to everyone who's anyone to try to get them sponsors. She is happy she is getting sponsors for kids who have a better chance of dying than living in the Capitol. And the question again becomes, what's the morality that allows that? Is that morality substantively different from what Gale had? Are the Capitol and Gale somehow at the same level? Cinna. Once again, he's a fashion consultant. He wants a tribute who has a better chance of living than dying to look good for her interview because it'll make him look like a great fashion consultant. Awesome. Would you be my friend? He's asking this question, would you be my friend? I'm going to make you look pretty so you can go out and die, more than likely. What kind of person does this? What kind of person sees somebody as a friend so that he can send her out to die? What kind of person tries to make everybody look good so that they can go out to die? Finally, Haymitch. It's all about how you're perceived. It's all a big show. I'm sorry about the typo. It's all a big show. So he has taken people to the games for decades, and he's now once again telling Katniss, whose odds of dying are greater than her odds of living, that perception is more important than reality. What kind of person does this? Who are these people at a moral level? And I think that this, to me, seems to be one of the core questions of this novel. Who are these people at a moral level? Do they have any redeeming social qualities? And we're going to talk about Haymitch more in particular next time around. But I think it's important to take a look at who or what are these characters and how do these characters live up to their names? Okay, so we're going to call it here. If you have questions, we'll get ready to talk about them Wednesday. Hope you have a good weekend. If you have questions about the paper, again, talk to me Wednesday as well.